Hi everyone. Just want to say welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that I think is sensitive. So we don't often talk about this thing, and just because of the sensitivity, and I think also it's also because some of us we do our best to hide it. It doesn't come up in the conversation. It's not something you put on your resume. It's not something you put on your on your Facebook profile or Facebook status. It's not one of those things that you put out there. It's something that we're all trying to sometimes, let me say, pretend that's not there, but actually we all have it. I want to talk to you about weaknesses and how to see them, because we all have it. One thing that I think unites us as human beings is we all have some kind of weakness in some kind of areas. Your weakness might not be my weakness. My strength may be your weakness. Your weakness might actually be my strength, and vice versa. So, it's something that we all have it. We all do have it. There's no one perfect person in this world that I can say does not have weakness. And I know sometimes, people look at us, let me use myself as an example. Some of you know what I do on YouTube with my piano instrumentals. I receive so many outstanding comments about how it's blessing them. And sometimes people can think you are actually, this guy is perfect, everything is perfect with him. And also me stepping out to begin to do this on this other channel, to begin to share the things that I've learned. It could make people think that this guy is all that. He's got everything figured out. It's perfect, He's got a good smile. I hope so. Anyway, but it could mislead people to thinking that this guy is perfect. He's got nothing. He's got no issues. He's got nothing he's working on. That is so far from the truth. If you've watched my videos since I started this project on this new channel, if you've been following my videos, you would see in most of those videos, actually I think in all my videos, how I've pointed everything I do back to God. How I've been very, very transparent in terms of, I can't do what I do without Him, without His help. I rely on Him daily. Even the music that I release every week, I wait on God to ask Him, what do you want people to hear this week? What's the message for the people? What do you want your people to hear? Should I encourage them to be still? Should I encourage them to praise and to worship you like I put up last week, praise and worship? So I try to wait on God. I try to depend on God to see how He wants me. So to use the things He's given to me. So if you've been following my videos, you will realize that this guy is not all that. Which tells you, I too have some things I'm working on. I have some things that I know without God, I would be totally exposed. Without God, it will be very clear that I don't know what I'm doing. And this is something that most people will not admit. People would, like I said, this doesn't come up on your resume. You don't put on your resume and say, okay, I'm weak in these areas. Nobody put out, on their resume. What we put on your resume, what you put on your CV, they're your strength. You put your strengths on there, the things you're really good at, the things you're expert at, your work experience, your educational experience, your skills, your communication skills, and all whatnot. That's what we put on there. We don't put weaknesses on our resume because nobody would hire you, right? And I know sometimes it does come up in an interview. They ask you what's your weakness and how do you deal with your weakness. And I think that usually throws a lot of people off. It makes them just go on a tangent because they tell the employer that they don't have any weakness. And the employer knows you're lying because we all do. Nobody, is exempted. We all have weaknesses. And today I want to talk to you about how to see them and what your weakness can do in the hand of God if you just learn to don't deny they're there and don't justify, don't let them be the reason why you're not doing what God has called you to do, but to really be well aware of your weaknesses and also still be able to fulfill purpose and do the things that God has called you to do. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Your weaknesses are to me, I believe they're the things that attract us to God. And I'm going to explain what I mean. I believe, when God was creating the whole world in the book of Genesis, and the Bible said after He created everything, God looked at everything He has created, including man, and God said, this was good. This was good. And I think I've asked God about this. I was thinking about it. I was like, God, if you said this was good, you made me and I'm good. In the book of Psalms, it said, we're God's masterpiece, that we're fearfully and we're wonderfully made. And I was like, God, if this was good, why do I have this flaw? Why do I have this weakness? Why do I struggle in this area? And one of the things I believe is a response that I got from God is, they look beautiful to me. That's God saying that they look beautiful to him. When I see that and I see you doing what I've called you to do, then I can make my strength available to you. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to kick off with a story. It's about a water bearer in India. Actually, growing up in Nigeria, I actually saw this happen as well. We had a tribe in Nigeria that does this as well. So a water bearer, usually what they do is they have like a stick, they have a rod across their neck, on the back of their neck. They have a rod just resting on their shoulders, and what they do is on each side of the rod or the stick, whatever you want to call it, there is a pot. So usually they will hang 2 pots on each end of the rod, and they will go to the river to go fetch water. And they will fetch the water and then they will take it back. So obviously, I think it's a matter of doubling your efforts. So instead of going all the way because it's a long walk, instead of going all the way to the river with just 1 pot, they would go with 2 pots so they can double the effort on both ends. And then they will take the water back home. This water bearer in India had 2 pots. So there was a crack in one of the pots. And one pot was perfect. The other pot had a crack in it. This water bearer goes back and forth daily for about 2 years, fetching water for our master's house. So one day, when they got back home, the pot with a crack talked to the water bearer and said, I'm not really happy about myself. The water bearer was saying, what's the problem? He said, because for the last 2 years, every time we've gone to the river to go fetch water, I would always come back home with half of the water is already gone because of this crack on my side. So I never come back home full. The other pot comes home full every time we go to the river, but I come half full because I lost all the water due to this crack on my side. So the water bearer said to the pot, he said, you know what? I'm not going to answer your question, but the next time we'll go fetch the river, watch your side of the road and observe the beautiful flowers that are there. And then do the same on our way back, and then we will talk. So when they got back home, the water bearer asked, he said, so what did you see? What did you notice on our way back? He said, actually, I noticed that when we were coming back, there were these beautiful flowers on my side of the road. But on the other side of the pot, there had no crack and there was nothing. It was just dry land. And the water bearer said something to the pot. He said, do you know that those flowers wouldn't have been there if not for the crack in your side? He said, I knew about your flaws. I knew that you had a crack. So I put seeds along your path so that whenever we're coming back from fetching water, you will water those seeds. And he said that I knew about it, so I took advantage of your crack. I said, instead of allowing these waters to go to waste, I will plant seed on this path so that this pot that's got a crack in it can drip water onto this and water them. And that's where those beautiful flowers came from. And said, I will pluck these flowers and I will dress the master's house with it. I said, without your crack, there will be no beautiful flowers. So your crack allowed me to be able to get beautiful flowers to decorate my master's house. And he said to the pot, don't despise your crack. There's beauty in them. Isn't that a wonderful story? Wonderful story of how, even though we might be cracked, we might have weaknesses, we might have flaws, but the Almighty God knows how to take those weaknesses if only we can surrender them to Him, and He can use it in magnificent ways to make this world a better place. I've met so many people who have disqualified themselves from the race of life, from their journey of life, from their purpose, from their vision, because of flaws, because of these weaknesses that they think they have, not knowing that it's exactly the same thing that should attract them and lead them back to God, so that they can, through the strength of God, do something that even when people look at them, they will know that it's not them but it's God. The Bible talks about in the book of 1 Corinthians, it said God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. It chose the weak things of the world to put to shame the mighty. There is a man in the Old Testament, Moses, and I believe I've shared this story on one of my videos. When God was about to send him to go deliver children of Israel, he was giving God many excuses. He told God, yeah, if I go, they will not believe me. God said, okay, tell them I am that I am. Give them this. And then, God, and then he said to God again, God, I can't speak. God said, I made you. I made your mouth. Whatever I give you, you will say to them. And he continued and continued to the point that God was angry. The Bible said God was angry because what God was trying to tell Moses is, Moses, I am all you need. In spite of your weakness, I chose you. In spite of your frailty, I chose you. In spite of your flaws, I chose you. And what God was trying to tell Moses is, change your focus. Stop focusing on the inabilities, focusing on your weaknesses, stop focusing on your flaws, stop focusing on the things that are not of me. Focus on me. Change your focus. The one thing I've learned about focus is whatever you focus on magnifies. You keep looking at the same thing over and over and over again. Guess what happens? It gets bigger over time. It gets bigger over time. It magnifies. It gets bigger over time. And what God was trying to tell Moses, and I believe is telling all of us, even you watching this video, is change your focus. Change your focus. Stop focusing on your weaknesses and flaws. Yeah, be well aware of them. Yeah, know that God knows about them too. But focus on His strength. Focus on His power. Focus on His courage. Focus on His grace that the Bible said is sufficient for you. I'll share my own story. Growing up, I know most of you watching this one, you will not believe this. You will not believe it. Growing up, I had speech problem. I could not talk properly. I used to stutter, like to the point that I would have to beat myself up to talk. I struggled to talk. I couldn't even talk in the front of people, let alone me doing this behind the camera. No way. I used to stutter. I was filled with fear. I was nervous. I could not even talk. I had this experience when I was in high school back in the UK. I remember I wanted to use the toilet, but I didn't know where the toilet was. But because I had speech problem, I could not ask somebody to show me the direction to the toilet. That's how bad it was. Also, another experience I had while in high school is we were doing English literature. And I remember we were reading one of Shakespeare's book. And in that book, it was a play. So we all had to assume a character. So I think I was Mr. Hooper in that book. I can't remember the title of the book, but I think I was Mr. Hooper in that book. And guess what happened? Everybody was taking turns. So as in a play, when it gets your turn, you read your own line, you read your sentence. When it got to my point, and the whole class was quiet, I could not say anything. I could not talk. It's like my tongue got twisted. So I growing up, I had speech problem. I could not convey myself. I could not communicate in any level, in any way. But could you imagine the same guy that's been talking to you for the last 15 minutes was never able to talk? I had speech problem. But guess what? I realized I had a weakness in me. All I did was turn it over to God. I said, in spite of my weakness, in spite of that, I'm going to trust God. That God can still speak through my mouth. And guess what? Over the years, God has healed me from that. And now I can speak for hours. You would actually have to shut me up to shut up. When you bring up a topic that I'm passionate about, I can talk about it in front of thousands. I don't care how many people are watching. I can talk about it. And that only happened because I wasn't denying my weaknesses. All I did was, every time I decide to do what I do now, I trust in His strength. I know that His strength is made perfect in my weaknesses. What are you focusing on? Are you spending your time, your energy focusing on your weaknesses, and you've disqualified yourself from the things God has called you to do because I'm weak, because I can't talk, because I can't do this, because I can't do that? Instead of us to be able to rely on God and say, God, you know what? I'm going to trust you. I'm going to offer to you my weaknesses and watch you do mighty things through it. Paul, I talk about Paul a lot in my video because he's an inspiration to me, Paul had a very horrible past, very horrible. He was a murderer. Paul was the one persecuting Christians. He was killing them. He was doing all sorts of atrocities. But yet, the man that wrote a third of the New Testament, that wrote most of the New Testament, had that kind of past. Yet God chose him. Yet God was able to use him. Yet God was able to, in spite of his past, to still use him to touch the world like he did, And Paul said there was a time Paul had an infirmity in his body, and he was praying to God about it. He said, God, please take this thing away. And he said, I prayed many times about this, but God did not take it away. So maybe you're there too. You've been praying about this one thing. God, take this away. Only if God can heal me. Only if God can take this away. Only if God can make sure this goes away. Paul said, I prayed about it many times, and it never happened. But one thing God said back to him is, Paul, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And Paul responded, he said, because now I know that his grace is sufficient. Now I know that for me to be able to activate the strength of God, I've got to be able to know and rely on him. Paul now said, because of this, I'm going to glory in my infirmity. I'm going to glory in my weakness. I'm going to glory in my tribulation. He said, because I know that when I'm weak, then I am strong in God. Then his strength is made perfect in my weakness. One thing I've realized is, God allowed me to have these weaknesses so that when people look at my life, they will know it's not me. But it points them to the God who can do amazing things through weak vessels. Being weak is not to disqualify you from God doing what God has called you to do. And maybe you've used this as an excuse for many years for not doing the things God has called you to do. But please, from today, make a decision to surrender your weaknesses unto God. The Bible said that men may see your good works and give glory to your Father. One thing I love about what I do is when people see me, when people listen to my music and watching this video. Actually, let me tell you, one of the inspiration behind doing this project or beginning to share these things is so that when people look at me, when they watch these videos, they will be inspired that if God can use this man who had so little, who had nothing, who had his own share of weaknesses, who couldn't talk, the guy that was struggling to talk, that could not even communicate, growing up, that had speech problem, could be talking to you right now, you're watching it. That's one thing I'm always hoping for, that when people see that, they will be inspired that if God can use me, he can use them. How do you see your weakness? Have you allowed them to stop you? Or do you allow them to make you totally 100% rely on God to do the things God has called you to do? There are many scriptures that buttress that point. One of them is in Joel, I believe. He said, so let the weak say, I am strong. Another one in Isaiah said that it gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, it increases strength. The Bible said in the book of Chronicles, it said, God looks to and fro throughout the whole earth. And what was he looking for? He's looking for a man whose heart is loyal to him. A man who can say, I am nothing without God. Who's going to rely on God to get things done, so that at the end of it, God might get all the glory. I don't want you to not do what God has called you to do because of these weaknesses, because of these flaws that you think you have. Like I said previously, we all have flaws. We all have weaknesses. Some of us, like me, we've just learned to not let them stop us. We've offered them unto God and say, God, regardless of these flaws, regardless of these weaknesses, I'm going to serve you. Even though I've got this crack in my side, I've got this crack, I'm flawed, yet I want to watch how beautiful you can make my life. And therefore, making me a testimony to my generation, to the people around. Because one thing I know is, people that knows you right now, they know you have this weakness. Imagine the powerful testimony you would have when you start doing the things that they know that you are weak in. They know that it's no longer you. It is God who is working through you. And that's what the Bible says, God is at work in us, both to do and to will for his own good pleasure. I want to encourage you today to surrender your weaknesses to God. Don't let them limit you from doing the things God has called you to do. It's okay to be weak, because when you're weak, then his strength is made perfect. What is that one thing you've been putting off for years? Because you've been focusing on your weaknesses. And like I said earlier, when you focus, whatever you focus on will magnify. You focused on it for so long that it's become so big, it's injuring you, it's stopping you from doing the things God has called you to do. But guess what? With that weakness, also you have treasures on the inside of you. And what the enemy does is make us to focus on the weaknesses and the flaws and take our eyes off the treasure that is waiting to come out. fighting to come out of us so that we can release them to this earth. And God is saying today, yeah, I know about the weakness, but also I know about the treasure that I put inside of you. If you focus on your weakness, the treasure will never come out. But if you shift your focus and focus on Him, and watch the treasure in you begin to bless the nations of the world. That is my encouragement on this video. I hope this has encouraged you. Stop focusing on your weakness. Stop focusing on your flaw. Yeah, be aware of them. Yeah, know they're there. Do what you can to get better in those areas. Absolutely. If it's something you can work on, you're weak in this area, you can work on it. If you think you can take some courses, whatever you think you can do to get better in that area, please work on it. But what I'm trying to say ultimately is, don't let them stop you from doing what God has called you to do. Last scripture is in the book of Hebrews. It was talking about the heroes of faith who did great things. Now, Hebrews 11 talks about the heroes of faith, these people that did mighty things through God. And I love the closing verses. It said that these people, they through their weakness did mighty things for God. They put many to flight through their weaknesses. So the Bible actually acknowledged that everyone that God used in the Bible, they were weak. They had some kind of weaknesses, but through it, God did mighty things. So why should your weakness stop you and I? Why should our weakness stop us from doing what God has called us to do? Why don't we learn like them, begin to surrender them to God? Trust Him with it. Like I said, do all you can. If you can improve in those weak areas, if you can improve in those flaws, do it. But don't let it stop you from doing what God has called you to do. We are all weak. I've learned to embrace my weakness. I've learned to rejoice in my weakness, because when I do that, I know that what it does is it draws me back to the heart of the Father. And I've seen God shows Himself on my behalf. It's the God in me doing these great things, making these things happen. It's okay to be weak. All I want to do is I want to show the strength of my God through what I do. So in spite of my weakness, I'm going to do what He's called me to do anyways, so that when you see what I do, you don't glorify me. You glorify my Father in heaven. And then it inspires you to know that if God can use me and do this thing He's doing through me, in spite of my weakness, He can do this through you. Do me a favor. If this has blessed you, make sure you share it with at least one person, because I know this is the message. This is something that we don't talk about often. People don't talk about it. It's not pretty, it's not something you put out there, but share it with somebody. Encourage someone to step out, to shift their focus and begin to look unto God, the author and the finisher of our faith. All right? So from today on, what do you do with your weakness? You embrace it. You glory in it, knowing that His grace is sufficient for you, and His strength is made perfect in your weakness. I look forward to hearing your testimony and your story. I look forward to having God welcome us when we get to heaven and say, "Welcome, thou good and faithful servant. Even though you were weak, yet you did these mighty things through my strength." That's what I pray for you and I.